going to hear an incredible story, but here's what I like about Dan. I don't know if you know this, but Dan qualified as a platinum star in Kivana and actually won the award to go to the Bahamas, but could not attend because of a conflict with the schedule. He's in the business, he's engaged, he's a wonderful individual. Please help me welcome Dan Jansen.
He is the fastest ice skater in the history of the world. He's never won an Olympic medal, and this is his last chance. We don't tell you who to root for in these games, but I will tell you this. Even the skaters who have raced against him all these years are pulling today for Dan Jansen. It is all in his mind, of course. How could it not be in his mind? As he circled the course yesterday, slowly, pensively, how could he not have been thinking about the Olympics of 1984 when he was only 18 and missed a medal by a hair? And 1988 when he was world sprint champion but fell in the Olympics? And 1992 when he was world record holder but finished fourth in the Olympics? And 1994, his greatest season, when, after setting 2 world records, one after another in international competition, he came to the Olympics, and last Monday, skating strongly and certainly toward a sure gold medal, slipped and lost again. His teammates, like Bonnie Blair nearby in the stands, could hardly stand it. The whole world of speed skating was genuinely heartbroken for Dan Jansen.
I remember walking down the tunnel. I knew after Albertville, I remembered the very specific feeling I had of just emptiness, of this is unbelievable, and I never wanted to feel that again. And as soon as I was walking through this tunnel, there it was again. It was that exact same feeling, if not probably worse.
After a trying 3 days, Dan Jansen returned for a last chance at an Olympic medal.
I knew this was if not the last race of my life, certainly the last Olympic race of my life. Not only did I know this was my last shot, but I also knew that I didn't feel great in warm-up and I wasn't gripping the ice. And so then you start to think a little bit about, the family that were there. I don't want to do this to them again. I don't. During the warm-up, or 5 minutes before my race, because of the way I felt, I thought, I don't think this is going to happen. Don't even hope for anything anymore. Just, skate and see what happens.
So, down the runway and into an Olympic arena comes Dan Jansen, one last time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage 1994 Olympic gold medalist, U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame member, and Kivana legend, Dan Jansen.
Thank you. Thank you. What a great welcome. Somehow, after being here all weekend, I felt like I was going to get a standing ovation when I came out. I don't know why, just because you guys like to stand for people, but I appreciate it very much. First thing I want to do before I start and before I share my story with you is thank a couple people. First of all, I want to thank people who take care of our team. I want to thank Jerry Campese and Chris Cavanaugh. Done a great job with our team, and we appreciate it. And secondly, I want to thank the founders. These guys, they truly are the reason that Mike and Bonnie and myself, and now Bart and Nadia, joined, along with the fantastic products, of course. But once we met these guys, as I think you've all seen here today, they're fun, they're family guys, they get it, and it's the reason. So thanks to you guys. All right, so what I want to do tonight, I know some of you maybe were here last year, you heard bits and pieces of my story. Some of you know it. Some of you may have never heard of me, and either one of those are okay. I want to take you through it. I want to take you through each of the Olympics I competed in, because my story comes to you through those things, through the sport of speed skating and the Olympic Games, but it's not about those things. It's about things that we all go through, and it's about things you're going to go through in this business. You probably have already, ups and downs. It's about persevering and maybe most importantly about perspective. And my story is certainly about that. When I look back, I'm very fortunate to have competed in 4 different Olympic Games. When I look back, the first one was probably the purest. It was probably the most innocent, if you will. I had no expectations. I had a simple dream that year. Not simple in terms of the achievement, but simple in terms of the only thing I wanted to do was make the Olympic team. I wanted to be there. I had seen the best speed skater ever 4 years earlier, Eric Heiden, win 5 gold medals in Lake Placid in 1980. 1984, I'm an 18-year-old kid fresh out of high school. And my dream was to make the team, and I had been skating since I was 4 years old. My dream came true. I made my first Olympic team. I will never forget the first one, walking out in that stadium behind our flag, behind the U.S. team, and really being completely in awe of the games. I wasn't watching on TV anymore. Now I was there. I was able to compete, and it truly was the experience of a lifetime at that point. When the Olympic flame went out that year, I was 4th best in the world. I finished 4th place in the 500 meters. I missed a bronze medal by 16/100ths of a second. Not a lot of things you can do in 16/100ths of a second. I know what it is, and you guys may not. I took a stopwatch, starting and stopping that thing as fast as I could, trying to figure out what it was. But to be honest, I wasn't disappointed. 4th place, my dream had been met. My goal had been reached. I made the team, and I thought maybe with the race in my life I could finish in the top 10, and I got 4th place. So I was happy. I was proud of myself. Thank you. Thank you. And the funny part is, I remember going home. I'm flying back. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm flying back. By the way, 1984 Winter Olympics, I don't know if any of you remember where those were held. Unfortunately, in a country that truly doesn't exist anymore, Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. Unbelievable place. And people. But here's what I'm thinking at 18 years old after my first Olympics, after I just got 4th. Not the proudest thing that I have to admit, but here's what's going through my head. Man, I just got 4th at the Olympics. Wonder if they're gonna have a parade for me when I get home. I swear. I didn't get my parade. I got home and some friends, some people I didn't know actually came up and said, gee, Dan, 4th place, that's too bad. Nice try, no medal, maybe next time, all of these things, and a lot of them negative, and it opened my eyes a bit. And I think if I look back, and I will share the things I learned from each games, and the thing I learned from 1984 and my first experience at the Olympics was about success, it was about expectations. But speaking of success, I think success is defined in a lot of different ways. And if you think about it, your own personal definition of success, what is that? Think about it for a second. What does that mean to you? Well, I have kind of been over this a few times since, and wondering, talking about success. It's got to be, first of all, success. There's a lot of people who are going to judge your success. We're all judged in our society, whether it's our teachers, our coaches, the press, the media. How good, how bad were you? But success, you've got to be the ultimate judge of your own success. You're the one who knows. You can't lie to yourself. It's real hard to do. Some people are pretty good at it, but it's hard to do. You're the only one who knows if it's truly 100%, if you gave everything you had to be at your best. And if you did, to me, there's a measure of success in that. And no matter where you end up, there's, Bob, I think yesterday, I heard you mention a couple different times, John Wooden, a great basketball coach for UCLA. I think 11 or so NCAA championships, arguably one of the greatest coaches ever. I ran across a quote from him as well. I didn't put it up here. I have it here because I just ran across it. But I thought it was a great definition. And he says, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming. Not only do I like it for what it says, I like it for what it doesn't say. What word does he not use when he describes success? Winning. Maybe the most successful coach ever, asked to describe success, never mentions the word winning. Because success isn't really about winning. Success is about you doing the best that you can do and finding what it is inside yourself to make yourself the best that you can become. And it's a great quote. So, as I move ahead, let's talk about, well, as we get toward my next Olympics, because after 1984, now things are starting to go well for me. Internationally, I'm starting to win medals on the World Cup circuit, at the World Championships. I'm getting bigger and stronger and technically better. I'm skating faster. And I knew that if I kept improving at this rate, I'd probably go into my second games as a favorite for 1, possibly 2 medals at those games. Before I get you to 88 in Calgary, just a couple things I want to share and things that I learned training and competing, but I still use today, and I think they're so very important. I heard a lot about them in the last couple of days. The first one, you've probably been hearing about since you're this high, and it's about goals. Maybe a different way to look at setting or achieving your goals. And I learned that goals are achieved in steps. And I learned who the best people are at step number 1. Step number 1 in achieving any goal. Before I tell you what step number 1 is, I want to tell you who the best people are at achieving step number 1. The best people, step number 1 in achieving any goal, children. And I'll tell you why I learned this. I learned this from my own daughter. I realized it from my own daughter. My youngest daughter was 10 at the time. And we were cleaning up in the bedroom. And on her bedside table, there was a note. And I picked up the note, and I maybe a little nosy as a dad, but I wanted to see what it was about. So I read the note, and it says, "Thank you very much. I've worked so hard for this, and I'm really proud," and it's going on and on. And I had no idea what she had done what she won or what she had done. And so I said, "Olivia, what is this note about? What's this for?" And she said, "Dad, that's my acceptance speech for when I win American Idol." So I didn't tell her that she doesn't have the best voice in the world, but I thought, what a great example of step number 1 in achieving any goal. Step number 1 is very simply believing that it is possible. You've got to believe it's possible when you set a goal for yourself. If you don't believe it, if it's just out there, if you make a statement with your heart isn't in it, it's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that. You've got to believe. And once you do that, obviously there's many more. And I want to share with you a great story about, and it actually relates very much to what you learned yesterday about and the whole weekend, about where you guys want to go and where you want to be. As we train for my sport, very, very physical, as you can imagine. And in the summertime, when we were off the ice, it was everything from weight training to cycling to running up hills, leaping, all kinds of power and speed and strength and endurance. And every Sunday morning, we used to drive out to the nearest ski hill near my home, and we would run up and down this hill a dozen times or so. We'd get down in that skating position, and we would leap all the way to the top on 2 legs and 1 leg, some crazy, painful stuff. And we all have good days and we all have bad days, right? I was having a horrible day one Sunday. We had probably run 10 hills by this point. My coach looks at his watch. He says, "All right, 30 seconds, we're going again." And I looked at him and I said, "Coach, I think I'm done today. I'm about maxed out, and it's just, I'm sick to my stomach. I'm lightheaded, and I don't feel well." And he said, "All right." He said, "But before you pack it in for the day," he said, "I want you to think about this." He said, "From the time I start this watch and say go till the time you get to the top of that hill," he says, "you never take your eyes off the top of the hill." And I thought about it. He was right. I didn't. And I said, so what? Well, that's where I'm going. He said, yeah, that's where you're going. He said, but look at the top of the hill right now. And I looked up there. And he said, now look at me. And I looked at him. He said, do you still know where you're going? And I said, I do. And he said, well, he said, it's important. He said, you know where you want to go. The top of the hill is your goal. He said, but once you start running, just look 10 feet in front of you, and another 10 feet, and another 10 feet. And pretty soon you're going to look up, and you're going to be at the top. And I tried it, and it worked. And it's so important when you have a long-range goal. And as I was listening yesterday, I'm thinking about all of you in this business. And whether it's diamond is your goal, what did Craig tell you was your real goal? How many a month? 2 a month. So you don't wake up every day thinking diamond. You wake up every day thinking 2 this month. That's all I need to do. And that's your 10 feet. So it's short-term goals leading to that long-term goal. And the reason this was so important for me is because, as you probably know, the Olympics, how often are the Olympics held? That's right, once every 4 years. We don't have a Super Bowl every year, a World Series. We don't have 4 majors every year like golf or tennis. We have Olympics once every 4 years. We do have world championships, those things, but Olympics once every 4 years. If it doesn't go your way, and unfortunately it happened to me a couple times, you can't think, my gosh, I got 4 years till I try this again. You've got to take it in steps. And it was so important and such an eye-opener for me. And every goal I've ever set since, I've used that philosophy. The second thing, and very quickly, but I think also very important, very individual sport, speed skating. I'm out there by myself. Well, there's another guy next to me. I'm skating against the clock. It is really me against the clock. But let's compare that to this business, independent business owner, IBO. I'm an individual sport, but I will tell you that teamwork had everything to do with my success. There is no such thing, I don't believe there's any such thing as a self-made person success story. Everyone who's been successful has had others in their lives along the way to learn from, to lean on, whatever that may be. I did, whether it was Bonnie or my other teammates, my coaches. I do now in this business. You all do. I know I've seen your teams here. You guys are great. And so my team, though, from a young kid, I told you I started skating at 4 years old. What I didn't tell you, I was the youngest of 9 children in my family. Grew up with 8 older brothers and sisters who all skated before me, and so going through it, they knew ups and downs. They were very helpful, very supportive. By 1988, my team, my parents, my brothers, my sisters, led to my very first world championship. 1 week later, my second Olympic Games. I'm going into Calgary as obviously a favorite. Sometimes, unfortunately, life gets in the way of our dreams, of our goals. And sometimes we don't have much control over things. About a year earlier, during a routine blood checkup after the birth of her 3rd child, my sister Jane, the youngest of my 5 sisters, was diagnosed with leukemia. Jane went through a year I can't even describe to you, in and out of remission several times, had a bone marrow transplant, which took for a while, and we were all so hopeful. And then back it came. God knows why, but these 2 worlds, Jane's literal fight for her life and my training for an upcoming Olympics, happened to come together on the very same day. Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1988, the day of my first race, 500 meters. Race in which I was favored to win gold. I spoke to Jane for the last time that morning. Jane wanted me to win. She wanted me to do the best I could. I wanted both of those things, but I also wanted to be home. I wanted to be by her side. And maybe a case of your mind being one place and your body being another. Maybe some of you remember. 100 meters into that race, I fell. 4 days later, 1,000 meters, my second final race of those games. I'm leading with just a half lap to go on a world record pace. I fell again. Now, we all fall down. We all get knocked down. We all go through times we don't understand. We go through times, things we can't control. We have to figure out ways to get up again, to move forward. I think maybe the biggest thing I learned from 1988 and that whole experience leading up to, I lost a sister. I didn't even cross the finish line in 2 races that I was favored to win medals in. And yet I figured out a way that I had to learn. And that's the biggest lesson I learned from the whole thing is the greatest thing happens to you or the worst thing happens to you, find a way to learn from it. I didn't wake up the next morning and say, okay, here's what happened. This is disastrous. What do I learn? I get it. Life doesn't work that way. But as time went on, I was able to look back and learn from those experiences. And you've got to do the same because every time you go through a tough patch, you've got to learn from it. You've got to get back up and you've got to move forward. You really don't have a choice. You've got to do it. And so as I was sort of deciding whether I wanted to continue skating or what I wanted to do, I was only 22 years old at the time. And so I knew I wasn't done. But something came back to me that it turned out to be one of the best lessons I ever learned in my life. But at the time, it was, I thought, the worst thing anybody could ever say to me. You'll understand in a minute. This had come back to me after about 10 years. I'm 12 years old. I'm getting ready for my very first national championship. I'm so excited because I'm pretty sure I can win this thing. My first nationals, and I can't wait. My parents, two of the greatest people ever to walk the face of this earth, drive my brother Mike and I up to St. Paul, Minnesota for the national championships. 6 hours in the car, the weekend goes by. One kid beats me in my division. I finished second place. I'm runner-up. My brother Mike, he wins his division. He's national champ. So we've got to ride home 6 hours back to Milwaukee. That's Sunday night. I cried in the back seat of the car for 6 straight hours, and I'm not exaggerating. So if any of you would have the pleasure to meet my dad is a quiet guy, big guy. You know, he didn't say a lot, but when he said something, it always meant a great deal to us. And he always had a way, when things didn't go our way, to make us feel better in a word or a sentence. And so in this 6-hour ride home, and I'm in the back seat crying, I'm wondering when these magic words are coming, right? Not a word. Lets me cry. Finally, we get home. He takes me in the house. He sits me down in the living room. And now I'm thinking, all right, after 6 hours, this is going to be really good. I can't wait. I need something right now. My dad looks me straight in the eye. You ready for this? Maybe the greatest thing you'll ever hear? Straight in the eye. He says, Dan, he says, you know, there's more to life than skating around in a circle. There's more to life than skating around in a circle. And he got up and he left the room. And I'm pretty sure that he was just going to get a drink of water and he was coming back and he was going to finish this, right? I didn't see him again. And so I believed him because he was my dad, but I could not understand for the life of me what he meant. And sort of let that go for a long time. And now, literally 10 years later, and after the death of my sister and after my 2 falls at those Olympics, that belief that I had in my dad grew into an understanding. At least for me, I knew what he meant. It was, look, skating, you can be as good as you want to be. You can train as hard as you're going to train and try to achieve any goal you desire. He said, but it's always going to be what you do. Skating is never going to be who you are. Who you are is how you react to the things that happen. It's not the things that you actually do. And so it was an important, thanks. It was a very important realization for me. And now, after remembering all this, I knew I wasn't done. And I have to jump ahead here, again, 4 years, but after 88, I did make this promise to myself, and I said, look, if you can get to a race, look back afterwards and know there's not one more thing you could have done to be at your best on that day, you've got to be satisfied, because that's all you can do is prepare, 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 and then go out and do your best. And so that was the promise I made to myself. Now let's jump ahead 4 years. Albertville, France. Going into those games, 92, hadn't finished worse than first or second place all season long on the World Cup circuit. I'm a favorite for gold again. It's going to be gold or silver, because nobody else was even close to my friend and myself. Wake up the morning of the 500s, raining outside, horrible weather, horrible conditions. I didn't care. Whatever the weather is, I figured I was the best. I can win this race. Bottom line, 3 guys beat me again. Finished 4th place. A much different feeling than that 4th in Sarajevo, because this time I should have won, and I knew it, and everybody knew it. And it didn't happen. And I had no excuses. It just didn't happen that day, at that moment in time. But I do remember that it hurt. And I remember lying in bed that night and shedding some tears and going through the emotions that you go through, not as an athlete, but as a human being. And then I thought about it for a second. I said, wait a minute, what have you been telling yourself and the press and the kids you've spoken to these last 4 years? You said you were going to prepare yourself 100%, go out, do the best you could do, and be satisfied. And I knew I had to take my own advice. And so with that, I decided it's got to keep going. Well, the next morning, I got to have breakfast with guess who? My dad. I can't wait for his magic words this time, right? I mean, it's got to be better. We have a great breakfast, we chat, and my dad says to me, he told me really what I would have loved to hear back when I was 12. He said he was proud of me, and he said, we know you're better than them. They know it as well. You beat them every other time. It didn't happen today. But then my dad looked me in the eye, and he said 3 words that I will take to my grave with me. I'll never forget as long as I live. He looked me straight in the eye this time, and he said, you're my hero. And to this day, it's hard to express what that meant to me. I literally, the stage is about 3 feet tall. I could have walked off it and not hit the ground. It was one of those moments in my life that it made everything okay like that. For some reason, he timed it right this time, and it was, and I didn't have to wait 10 years to know what he meant. It was truly a moment in my life I will never forget. And as I left Albertville, as I left France, after my 3rd Olympics, after winning everything I could possibly win in my sport except one thing, an Olympic medal, for the first time and only time in the history of the Olympic Games, we only had 2 years to wait till another Olympics. Back before that, they had the Summer and the Winter Games in the same year, if you remember. They decided they wanted to stagger them. And so 2 years, we would have another Winter Games and then go back on the 4-year quadrennium. So I wasn't done. As I said, I had accomplished everything I could except one thing. And so it was going to be another Olympics. We decided it there and then, and that was it. Well, we all have strengths, right? We all have weaknesses. You do, I'm certain. I do. I did skating, and I still do today. But I was really aware of what my weakness was when I skated. My strength was the 500 meters, a race I dominated for maybe a decade internationally. My weakness was the 1,000 meters. It was a race I had the speed and strength for, but I would get tired in the last lap. After years and years of tiring in the last lap, I began to expect to get tired in the last lap, and it was a fight, more mental than anything. And so after Albertville, we got home, and people within the sport said, you know what, forget about the 1,000 meters. Forget about that race. You train too much for that one, you're going to hurt your 500. This is your baby. This is your race. Both races will suffer, and you're not going to win a medal in either distance. My coach and I didn't believe that. We knew how to train for both races. We've been doing it a long time, but there's a great saying. It says, you cannot discover new oceans unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. Think about that. You can't be afraid to fail. You're going to be successful. Can't be afraid to be innovative, to try new things. Kivana's trying new things all the time. They're allowing us to try new things. It's when you are afraid, you know, and I've heard people say this. I've heard people say, well, the reason I'm successful is because of my fear of failure. And I don't buy that. I believe if you're truly afraid to fail, you don't even give it a shot. You don't reach out. You don't go out on a limb. You don't take risks. Maybe it's a dislike of failure. It would be more accurate. But you can't be afraid to fail. You've got to take risks sometimes. And so the last 2 years of my career, we trained for both races, set 8 world records over the last 2 years. December, just before the games, in February, became the first person to break the 36-second barrier in the 500. I know time-wise it doesn't mean anything to you, but think about it this way. Training for the 1,000 didn't hurt my 500, helped my 500. Easy lesson there, don't ignore your weaknesses. When you're good at something, it's easy to keep working on that, and you know, it's fun to win, but don't ignore the things you're not as successful at. When you improve those things, it all gets better together. So don't ignore your weaknesses. 6 years to the day of Jane's death, my first fall in Calgary is the 500 meters, Lillehammer, Norway. A race that I'm okay with the date. I knew it a year out what day it was going to be. It's a hard day for our family, but this is what it was. And I was prepared physically, mentally, and I went into Lillehammer as favored as I've ever been in any race. I had the 5 fastest times in history going into those Olympics in the 500 meters. If all just went halfway normal, I was finally going to win this medal and all would come to a happy ending. Get off to a great start. Good first turn, thinking I get to the last turn and I'm thinking in my mind, maybe thinking about a world record. None of the top guys had skated yet, so I wanted to set a great time. Well, maybe I pushed a little too hard. The ice breaks underneath me, and I slipped. I didn't fall, but I slipped. I slipped hard, and I lost all my speed, all my momentum, everything coming out of the last turn. And when you do that in a race that's decided by tenths or hundreds of a second, it's going to cost you a medal. And it did. 4 Olympics of my race had gone by, and not only did I not have a gold medal, I had no medal of any color. If you would have said that to anybody in our sport, it was hardly possible, and yet it happened. And now I had 3 days. I had 3 days to try to forget about this. 3 days to prepare for what? The race people told me to forget about. The race I didn't even like that much a couple years earlier, but a race that I was prepared for this time. I had worked so hard to believe in myself in the 1,000 meters. And I will tell you, it was not an easy 3 days, but I just want to share a couple quick things here because as I was getting ready to go to the line on this day, it's about 15 minutes before my race, and a couple things went through my mind, and I thought about when we got to Lillehammer, we had this big, huge, about this size maybe, press conference, reporters from all throughout the world, and I was almost finished, and the guy stands up way in the back, and he says, Dan, he says, you realize if you come out of these Olympics again without a medal, he says, you'll probably go down in history as the greatest speed skater never to have won an Olympic medal. I said, yes, sir, thank you for pointing that out. I said, the way I choose to look at it is that over the last 4 Olympics, I've also had the opportunity to become one of the most successful Olympians ever. Maybe that didn't happen, but I had the opportunity. And, you know, I touched on it before, but there are so many negatives out there, so many people trying to put negative into you. Flip those over. Turn them into positive. You can do that. If you turn a negative into a positive, it can change your day, it can change the way you wake up every morning, the way you go about your business, the way you treat your friends and your family, everything. Turn them into positives. And the very last thing I thought of before I stepped to the line, a strange time, I think, for this thought, but I think I needed one more last little bit of perspective because it was a big deal. There was a lot of people not only wishing me well, but it was a tough time. It was all on the line, and this was my last shot. And so I thought of this, and when I was a kid growing up, for some reason, maybe you did too, but I always used to want to know if we were rich. And I always used to ask my parents, Mom and Dad, are we rich? And my mom was a nurse for, well, 30-some years. My father was a police officer for 33 years. We had 9 kids. So you guys can do the math, right, on our finances. But the answer was always the same. The answer was always, yes, we're rich because we have 9 children. Always taught us to be thankful for what we have, not bitter about things we didn't have, maybe never would have. And so I thought, you know what, in a little over a minute here, my Olympics are over. That's it. I said, I'm going to bed tonight, and I'm waking up tomorrow morning, and if I win, if I finish 4th, if I fall, whatever happens, this is it. It's not changing. It's me now, and it's me tomorrow. And with all those thoughts in my head, I stepped to the line, and it turned out to be one of the most amazing days of my life. Just so happens I have a couple big screens here behind me, and you get to see what happened. This race is 2.5 laps long, but you're going to hear languages you may not understand. Doesn't need a translation, but it does give you an idea of the people around the world that were following my story by this time. If we could take a look, please.
There's nothing America would like to see more than an Olympic medal for that man.
Ready. Godt ut også på de to. Dan Jansen har vært litt uheldig med å få første ytre. Inoue er rask i starten, men han klarer ikke komme opp på høyde med Dan Jansen. Jansen うまく回りました。Jansen リードしています。200メートルのラップ。16秒71。早いです。いいペース。井上君もいいですよ。井上も16秒89。日本記録を出した時とほぼ同じタイムです。はい。
Jansen, a brilliant sprinter, fantastic technique at the start, but in the past has fallen apart on the final lap. Just watch him go here.
Ah, j'avoue que cela nous réchaufferait le cœur que de voir Jansen, dont les malheurs personnels et olympiques.
33-2 from Dan Jansen, 0.6 of a second ahead of Zelazowski, and there he goes, he'll have the final outer.
43-3! 43-28 noga räknat. Noch hat den Vorsprung. Noch kann hier gewinnen. Noch kann eine Medaille holen. Dan Jansen ここで立て直せるか。さあ、最後のカーブになる。はい。オリンピック最後のカーブか。
Now the home stretch.
Sitting down on the bench and literally trying to hold back my tears. I was so shocked, I was so happy, so all these emotions. If I would have let myself, I could have had tears just streaming down my face. But I remember vividly sitting on this bench and just shaking and holding back tears.
Gold medalist.
Premier et champion olympique.
Daniel Jansen, USA. The United States of America.
Les États-Unis d'Amérique.
Dan Jansen takes a victory lap. With the knowledge that he has fulfilled what he always intended to do. The words, "I do not try to be better than anybody else. I only try to be better than myself." A few minutes earlier, he paid tribute to his sister Jane. Now these moments are shared with a daughter who bears her name. And perhaps that is the way it should be. For it has been written, with every ending, there is a new beginning.
You don't have to stand again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Real quickly here, I know my time has gone long, but I do want to close with a couple things. If you don't feel old enough already, my daughter Jane is, who named after my sister, is a freshman at Clemson right now. But the funny thing is, I got a great quote from her. This is a few years ago, thank goodness, but you know how your kids continue, you know, they can bring you back down to earth sometimes, right? So I was getting ready to go do a talk, and I said, "Jane, I'll be back on Friday. I'll just be gone 2 days. I have to go give a speech." And she looked, she says, "Dad, you're still talking about that?" Okay, now to conclude. I will conclude with actually two quotes. One says that champions do not become champions when they win the event, but in the hours, weeks, months, and years they spend preparing for it. You truly are a champion without being first, without being a diamond. If it's everything you have, if you're prepared and given everything you've got, you're a champion. And it took me a while to learn that, but I learned it, I believe it. And the last thing I want to share is a quote that I had said, is that I do not try to be better than anybody else. I only try to be better than myself. We have to make ourselves better before anyone around us will get better. And if you do that, it is contagious. You will get better, your families, your teams around you will get better. I am so proud to be part of this company. I speak also on behalf of my fellow Olympians who are as well. And we look forward to being part of it for a long time. Thanks, God bless, and good luck. Thank you.